Good afternoon. Thank you for coming over on a wet April day, which I'm hoping will bring May flowers. That's my goal. Many of you will remember UB 2020 starting virtually a decade ago, in which the University of Buffalo began to understand the position a research university can play in the world and in the local region in Western New York, and how this institution wanted to be seen as a leader in intellectual thought, in growing the economy, and that led to tremendous conversation and branding of UB 2020 within the state. And that process went along, and there was a great deal of work that went into achieving excellence, which is sort of the underlying theme of UB 2020, of UB 2020. And then crises happened, and money was pulled out of the system, and the university was in trouble, and the state was in trouble, and then it sort of stabilized, and then we got this program called New York SUNY 2020, where we raised tuition and fees, and that brought new revenue to the university. And over a 5-year period, the concept was that we would grow our revenues by about $100 million. I joined 2 years ago, 1 year into that transition, and Satish asked me to begin to implement the concepts behind UB 2020, given the resources that we had and the new world that we were living in. And so I started about 18 months ago in this process and understanding UB and understanding our aspirations, in listening hard to all of the activities that were taking place on campus and to where we wanted to go. And that process we called Realizing UB 2020. It took about a year, an academic year, to listen, to hold forums, to receive emails, to get open forums and lots of questions and commentary that went into it. And out of that came a series of conclusions about where we wanted to go as a faculty. I certainly felt that I was reflecting both the outside pressures that are acting on the university and our internal aspirations and desires when we wrote the report that was published it sort of went into its final stages about this time last year, after all of these conversations that we had worked on. Now, the outside world has changed a lot. There are a lot of pressures acting on higher ed, and we're beginning to feel the squeeze of those in sort of subtle and substantial ways as we go forward. Bruce sent it to me today. I picked it up this morning, but there's an interesting column in the Chronicle of Higher Education today about the soul of a research university and this tension that exists between our need to educate large numbers of students beyond high school and our deeply held desire to do research on fundamental issues and to develop new ideas and undertake creative acts. That tend to be more elite, and yet UB is a public research university, and so we really feel the tensions between the enormous cost of educating in the elite way and at the same time our desire to be delivering those ideas that our society needs as we go forward. And so those tensions are very real. We are feeling them, and a lot of that went into realizing UB 2020 as we're trying to understand what we wanted to do and where we wanted to go. And so what I'd like to talk to you about today are key elements of what we said we wanted to do, we as a university, and directions that we hope to go going into the future. So UB 2020 was all about growing excellence, and we were going to do that by building a strong, productive, and diverse faculty. We're going to recruit, educate, and graduate talented, diverse, and successful students. We're going to have state-of-the-art infrastructures to achieve our goals, and then with those elements, we're going to impact challenges of our time, develop new ideas and directions that we want to go. We want to have a leading global presence. I tell people that I want everyone in the world to know where Buffalo is and to be beating a path to our door, because we are the ones that have the ideas. We're doing the research. We are the ones who are being creative in ways the rest of the world wants to understand and needs, and they're coming to us. And that's, to me, what it means to have a leading global presence. A key element that we think is important for us that came out of all the conversations that we held and that you've been holding for a decade is that we want to achieve our leading global presence with partnerships. And we want to partner with our various publics, and there are many that are out there. But in particular, we are helping to grow the economy of Buffalo through an EDS and MED strategy where we're growing our medical school in the core of the campus. And so that's one of the key elements of UB 2020 and New York City 2020. All right, so we had this report. It came out. It had a lot of recommendations. There were a series of task forces that were charged. As Bruce said, they worked through the fall semester. December 21st, their reports were due, and some dribbled in a few days late. And it came out with a series of recommendations. And this is sort of a summary of them. You can find those reports online, and they contain a lot of really useful information that we continue to mine and act upon. A core recommendation was that we build on our infrastructure, our history, and our student and faculty strength that we have in place. This is really important because the vast majority of the resources that we have and will get, say over the next decade, we have right now. Right? We have our buildings, we have our history behind us, and we have faculty and staff that are here. The additional hires that we have made or will make over the next few years with this increasing money, this is sort of icing on the cake. In fact, I think of it as sort of confectionate sugar that you sprinkle on a chocolate cake. It makes it look good, but it doesn't really change the substance of the dessert. Okay? It really is just sort of this little sprinkling that's on the top. So we need to, if we're going to march towards the excellence that we want to march towards, it's those of us who are here right now that have to do that. And that's why the recommendation is that we build on our infrastructure, history, faculty, and staff strength that are in place right now. Then out of this came a series of recommendations, two of which were that we establish signature initiatives. One is communities of excellence, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And the second is a series of programs that we're sort of lumping under curricular distinction, a key element of which is the general education program. There were a series of recommendations about key improvements that are needed across the campus. How are we going to sustain and expand our research and creative activity? So in that, we're seed fund programs in a variety of different areas, some in STEM, some in the humanities, some in the arts, some in engagement activities. There was a recommendation that we grow clinical translational research that grew out of this. There were key improvements in the student experience. So this goes from everything from our Center for Pedagogy, Innovative Pedagogy and Assessment, to heart of the campus, to a rec center for students, that sort of thing in the student experience. Operational effectiveness becomes important, that how we process our bills, how we pay ourselves, all those sort of inner business workings of the university have to be efficient and effective, or we're just stumbling over one another and it just clogs process. And so there are recommendations on how we can be operationally more effective. One of the key elements that comes out of that is in the area of IT infrastructure. We poll our students. Our students arrive with, on average, 5 wireless devices. That's on average, okay? So think of the bandwidth that we need on campus. This is an ongoing expense simply to keep up with the need for Netflix downloads, no doubt, during your lectures, okay? But not during my lectures, not during yours. Another thing that was recommended here was in the area of we needed strategic communication. How do we communicate to ourselves? How do we communicate to the outside world? And investments are being made in that. Then there was alumni engagement. How do we work with our alumni? We have a large number. How can we work with them more effectively and make them part of the UB family? All of these things cost money, and therefore we have to figure out what our research strategy is going to be, and we have to align it with our priorities. We have to know where we want to go, have strategies that are going to get us there, and then the money has to flow to support where we want to go. Right? So I'll talk about what we've done here. Finally, we have to talk about how we're going to sustain a culture of excellence. And we talked a lot about this last year. It was part of the conversations. It was a part of the feedback that we had through all of these interactions that we had, that we want to know that we're good. We want to know that what we're trying to achieve, we are achieving. And as a result, we want to measure how well we're doing, and we want to report on that progress. That we can't be a destination for the rest of the world if we aren't well known. I need to understand how is it we're being well known, and are the investments we're making leading us to that. And so that gets to the unit impact and standards analysis that I'll talk about at the very end. So let's talk about communities of excellence for a moment. The concept that we discussed and thought about was that we would like to define and pursue a series of big ideas that address the biggest issues and problems of our time, and that we would like to develop communities around them. These communities have to be big enough that multiple disciplines can play in them. They have to leverage across disciplines if we're going to be able to solve these problems. The one that we talked about was how to build a sustainable economy. And this led to UB Renew, and this led to ultimately the idea behind communities of excellence. To build a sustainable economy, you need to deliver goods and services, you need to generate wealth, and now we want to do it in a sustainable way. All right, to do that, it isn't simply that we need new technologies, solar panels. We need to change the way we interact with the environment around us, how we transport ourselves, how we deliver health. There are a large number of sort of social justice issues in the way we distribute equitably the resources that we have. We need new narratives that talk to us about that. We need new artistic creations that enable us as a society to think about the environment around us and how we're going to interact with it. It's more than technology. It's what we are as a culture if we're going to create a sustainable economy and distribute resources in an equitable way. We certainly have to get healthcare in there. Together, if we said we're going to have a program in building a sustainable economy, every school can play in that. People can begin to work within their discipline to get famous as an economist, as a chemist, as a chemical engineer. They can work within their discipline and be able to deliver that, and then leverage across what is a comprehensive research university. All right, that's what we are. We have this tremendous richness of disciplines and ideas and people. How do we harness that to our benefit to become well-known, distinctive, and build programs that are taking us places, okay? So the idea is we'll do this with communities. In the case of sustainable economy, it led to UB Renew, which we're marching forward on now. So we want to engage across disciplines, but we want to leverage and grow disciplinary strength that support whatever the big idea or concept is we're working on. Then we're going to invest in and leverage on human capital and infrastructure that is in place, right? And then we're going to do those things which we do and want to do even better. We want to do research, we want to do creative activities, we want to engage, do clinical care, do education, do economic development that is necessary to make progress against that big idea or that big issue. The result, we thought, would lead to thought leadership. This came out of a lot of discussion about how we were going to deal with external pressures that were acting on the university, how we felt we could go forward in concert to attack these big issues and take UB towards the excellence goals that we're after. Communities of excellence aren't primarily a hiring program. UB Renew is primarily a hiring program. It came out of a bringing together of 3 E-programs. We don't have to simply use the funds that are going into this for hiring faculty. What I'm looking for is the glue. What is the glue that holds a community together? Is it graduate students? Is it space? Is it symposia? What is it that would bring us together in a community so that people can work on a big idea from many disciplinary perspectives in order to attack it? So the big ideas now are due. They're due tomorrow. So get me your ideas. Right? There's a forum online. We've launched this. There have been 2 open forums on this. We're looking for ideas. It can come from an individual. It can come from a school. It can come from the entire college. It can come from a group of individuals. What we want are those really eye-popping ideas that we could come together under, that we can build the glue around, that UB can get known for and take us off in new directions, all right? So we're going to take concept papers, we're going to read them, we're going to try to begin to coalesce ideas that might be disparate and not know they exist at different places on campus. We'll ask them, these different groups, to come up with preliminary proposals. Those preliminary proposals will be written over the summer and into the beginning of the fall semester. Then there will be a preliminary proposal review stage. This will be done with open presentations. There will be, or public presentations, there'll be a review committee of vice provosts, vice presidents, deans, outside people that will then shorten that to a smaller group that'll take place sometime, let's say we've got here the middle of September, all right? And then The selected group will go to the full proposal stage. The full proposals are going to be complicated. We would like the communities to have aspects of all of our missions in them. We want them to have scholarship, research, creative activities. We want them to have education. We want them to have engagement, economic development components to them. Now, you don't have to have all of them. They don't have equally emphasized, but we want many of the missions of the university to be reflected in each one of the communities. So once you begin to do that and you're working across decanal units and across departmental units, it just takes time to understand how we're going to do that. And so one of the reasons we've gone through this process is to not take all of the big ideas that might start at the beginning and force them to write the full proposal. Because we're going to fund one, maybe two, at the end of the fall semester. So we didn't want everybody to go through all of that hard work. That seemed like a drain of energy. So the idea is to catch eye-popping ideas now, many of them begin to reduce it down, and in the middle of December, announce the first one or two communities of excellence we're going to invest in. We're expecting this to be an annual process for the next 3 or 4 years. We expect to come up with 5 to 8 communities that we're going forward into. We're looking at investing over a 5-year period, tens of millions of dollars in communities of excellence. Not recurring. A lot of this money could be non-recurring, right? It could go to supporting graduate students, which is not quite as recurring as supporting faculty lines or hiring lines, right? It could, but the point is that this will be ongoing. There are substantial investments that we're talking about putting in place. Okay, so in curricular distinction, you have to start at the very beginning. It's the curriculum. Faculty are in charge of the curriculum. Society has given us the authority to define and to prepare educated people. So the faculty have to drive. The curriculum has to be faculty motivated and faculty driven. Any changes, any content has to be run by the faculty. All right? So we listened hard to one another and came up with these elements of what we would like to do towards our core mission of education. When I came to campus, I didn't have general education on my mind, but I got a report, thump, dropped on my desk when I arrived. It said, it was written by as a faculty committee that came to me and said, our general education program is broken and it needs to be fixed. Okay, so I said, fine, let's do that. And in the task force reports, you can read a preliminary report on a group that was led by Andy Stock to think about what a new general education program could look like and directions that we wanted to go with. And I'll talk more about that in just a moment in the next slide. But that's a big effort that is ongoing, driven by the faculty to where we want to go as we think about what is going to lead to high-quality undergraduate education. Another element we spent a lot of time talking about last year was experiential learning and requiring that of undergraduates, graduates, and professional students. We started with the undergraduates. We haven't required it yet, but we started the process. The Senate has now defined for us what we think of as experiential learning. And it's a very broad swath of things that could go into experiential learning. I've now asked Scott Weber and Dennis Black to put together a program that will begin to create a center on campus that could be sort of a one-stop shop for the community to say, we want to offer experiences to students in the community, and they would know who to call. And then that center would know how to touch students, or students would know to go to that center in order to get their experiences. That's sort of for the experiences off campus. The Senate definition of experiential learning includes capstone courses, senior theses, research on campus. All of those are elements of the definition that they're using. We're beginning to build the infrastructure that would allow it to be outside the campus right now. Another area of significance that we talked about was significant international experience. And this one is taking longer to bring out of the ground. We have to define significant, we have to define international. It's a big deal. If we wanted to send all of our students to Shanghai, I'd need 2,500 people going to Shanghai each semester, even to Toronto with buses. It's a lot of buses. Okay, and then it isn't clear what the program is or what is significant. Right? So there are monetary issues here. There are programmatic issues. It's how we would organize ourselves as a faculty, how we would deliver those programs. On the other hand, there's tremendous interest here, unbelievable interest. On the, for winter break, for example, there were offered a series of courses that would take students to Tanzania, to Moldova, into the Caribbean. And when these courses were open, boom, They were filled almost as soon as they were open. So we have students that are interested, have capacity to help pay. There was a little bit of scholarship money, I think, that went into those. And so it's clear that our students share our interest in gaining and understanding the outside world, gaining a knowledge of and understanding the outside world. And so there are opportunities there, and that'll take time. There's a lot of work going on to it right now, but it's going to take longer to get that out of the ground. Finally, there was a lot of discussion of interprofessional education. This is primarily driven by the health sciences schools, and it is associated with building teams to deliver better health care to us. So it's the nurse, it's the social worker, it's the doctor, it's the dentist, working in a team to cure what ails us in a more flexible, coherent, and cheaper manner. All right? And so they're working on this, and they're finding that there is just, it's really hard to get those, to create the experiences that enable the students to learn together. You have differences in age. You have differences in the way courses are taught. It's a very complicated matrix to get together all of those students at one time. And there's a social dynamics. You know, there's a hierarchy. Surgeons, God surgeons, you know, that sort of things, right? And so there's that dynamic plays out when you're trying to do interprofessional education, and it's why there is a sense that we need interprofessional education. So it's complicated, right? But it's being worked on starting with the health sciences. However, there's a lot of interest outside of that. There is interest in the law school and the business school and engineering. All of our professional schools are interested in figuring out how to work in teams, because when we move out into the community, when we get our degrees, it's the team approach that actually lends to progress. So there are activities going on in that, and investments being made. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Universal General Education Program. We start with universal here because one of the key failures of our current Gen Ed program is that it's for everybody except, and the number of exceptions is almost more than the everybody. Okay, and so we have all of these exceptions that are built in. And what I was told, what is in this report, what I'm being told by the committees that we want to do is make it universal, distill it down to that core body of knowledge that we believe educated people should have. All right, so pare out those things that aren't core, and let's work on those. All right, so the sorts of things that I'm being told it emphasizes are the key things you would expect in Gen Ed. Critical thinking, ethical reasoning, internationalization. The sorts of things the committee says this ought to offer is shared intellectual experience across the curriculum. It should strengthen communication skills, and it ought to have core competencies. All right, so there are 90 faculty and staff that are working on this, working on it really hard. There was an interim report that was given out as part of the task forces. There's another interim report, progress report, that'll come out at the end of this semester. A huge amount of input is going into this. My job isn't to dictate anything about Gen Ed. That's owned by the faculty. All right? My job is to sort of provide the process, sort of keep it going in a direction so that we can create the distinctive education system we want at the undergraduate level. It is very clear when we look at it that significant new funds will have to be invested where it's necessary. All right? So there's money on the table in order to make this happen. Turns out this is really complicated. We have to work with SUNY. We have to work with transfers. We have to work within ourselves on what we think of as that core education we expect of our students. You can design the program, and it'll take 130 faculty and so many TAs and so many classrooms, and you could fund that. Okay, but then what do you do with everybody else who's already here? Right? So one of the challenges we face is how do we bring together those things that we are currently doing with those things that we say that we want to do. All right, so people in this room that are going to have to struggle with that. How committed are we to this concept of a liberal education? All right, how committed are we to the work that is being done by these 90 faculty and the report that they're bringing to us? We'll find out when this interim report comes out and begin to work with the resources that are going forward. It has huge implications across campus. Huge implications. It has all sorts of complicated issues associated with credit hours, use of adjuncts, distribution of TAs. I can assure you that if you haven't felt it, I have. Tremendous tension is being generated from this, all right? And I recognize that. I have to wait for the committee to tell me what's going on before I can even begin to think about what this would happen. Your dean is in the same position. He is at the moment working very hard with that committee. The ideas have to come to fruition. They have to be thought about. All right? And so we have to wait till June. I know that drives anxiety. We simply can't work any faster. If you want data and ideas that are there, go talk to the committee members. All right? I mean, they're there. They're happy to talk about it. One of the key things that we have to worry about is if we think about how we might shift around credit hours or adjuncts or TAs, what does that do for our graduate programs? We are, after all, a research university. These are intimately linked to one another. We rely on the TA funds to drive stipends for our graduate students. Graduate students are the lifeblood of our graduate programs and of our scholarship on this campus. So the commitment has to be to catching the opportunities to grow a superb undergraduate program and to sustain vibrant graduate programs. Right? That's the commitment. That's what we want to do. The question is, how are we going to do it? So this committee is doing their work on designing this program, and we have launched a lot of conversations about what this means about graduate programs and where we're going to go with those and how we can sustain them. And that, by the way, gets back to money. The question is, how much money do we have? Okay, so here's the timeline. There'll be a progress report that will be finalized and come out around June 1. It'll be open, available online. Please get us comments and discussion. Talk about it amongst yourselves. We hope to have a draft resource plan available at the beginning of the fall semester. Then we're going to talk about it all fall. Lots of conversation. I'm imagining that maybe there'll be changes, maybe there won't. We'll have to find out what's going on. We hope to have a final report with the resource plan sometime at the beginning of November. It then goes to the Senate and they get to review it. All right? Our process, our governance process, says that the purview of the curriculum is the Senate. The Senate gets to review and approve. If they approve. If they don't approve, we move on. All right? But that's the process that we have to go through. The concept of trying to get to the end of next semester is that by the fall of 16, we would like to launch the new Gen Ed program. And it takes this long, a year and a half, in order to figure out how to teach the classes, how to get the classrooms ready, how to rearrange all the processes that are taking place, and how to advertise it to the freshmen who would be joining in the fall of 16. One of the nice things about this is that if we start students in the fall of 16, they will graduate in 2020. Right? And that's kind of nice. Okay, so to do strategic initiatives, to talk about what we need to do in terms of the recommendations that came out, I need a resource plan. The principles that were built into the resource plan were that we want to align resources towards institutional goals. We want to assure that unit goals are aligned with our institutional goals. We want to sustain the excellence that is in place. And we have to build the capacity to pursue the institutional goals. So here's a quick primer on our budget. We started New York SUNY 2020 in 10-11. At that time, we had $630 million in our operational budget. That operational budget is faculty, it's staff, it's grounds, okay? This is all the money that we spend on campus, $630 million. Then we started increasing fees and tuition, and we grew it. And we grew it by $62 million. And the process that went out was that this money was distributed in a formulaic way. Money went out to units based on enrollment. The remaining money fell through to the Center for Strategic Initiatives. $47 million has been distributed out to units. $33 million of that has gone into academic units. That's been distributed out to the units. $15 million has also been distributed now, right? Because that's the strategic initiatives. It went into the E-funds. It went into Finish in 4. It went into research seed programs, right? So all that money has gone out the door and is gone. It's now in our base budget. Our base budget is now $692 million. Over the next 2 years, we get this increased fee and increased tuition, and we'll grow by $39 million. $10 million of that is going to go out just to academic units. It goes out, by the way, and this is heavily reliant on our enrollment. We don't sustain enrollment, we don't sustain that money. But assuming that we will sustain enrollment, we'll have $692 million in the base, we'll have $10 million more going out to the academic units, and then there'll be $29 million that will be held for the strategic initiatives that we've been talking about. That is communities of excellence, curricular distinction, and key infrastructure investments. But any investment we make from the center is going to be done with $29 million. That's all that we'll have at the center. Right? The vast majority of the money is right here. $692 million. Right? That's us right now. That's where the resources are. That's where our TAs are. The decisions we make here are going to really drive the excellence that we have. Now there's growth on top of that. 1% of this budget is going out into the units to make good things happen. Okay, continue to grow excellence. But if we really want to change things, this really is the confectioner's sugar on the top of the chocolate cake. It's right in here where we get to make decisions on how we want to spend our money, programs we want to build, directions that we want to go, how we are going to participate in communities. Right? That anybody we hire in communities just sort of adds to this incredible base that we have. All of the faculty, all of the staff, all of the students we already have in place that are supported by this money. Right? So they hopefully are joining this community of tremendous scholars, right? and educators. But it's that $692 million, which is where all our money is. All right, so the new resource model, we will be growing the base budgets, and those will enable excellence to grow. That's the $10 million, and then where this $29 million is spent. The strategic funds, which over the 5-year New York SUNY 2020 process were 1.2% of the base each year for 5 years, will leverage the base unit funds with infusions of infrastructure funds and funds to support human capital to enhance excellence. The funds in the unit and the central funds are really precious. They're unrestricted. We can do with them as we wish. Our ability to get them is tied to enrollment, but once we have the enrollment, they're largely unrestricted. Okay? But they're precious. They represent this small sliver up here, this 5%. That's all we have left. 5% of our operating budget in order to make things happen. So the result is we have to develop methods to be disciplined in the way we spend the money and make sure we're achieving our goals. And that's what brought us to this concept of how do we think about a culture of excellence? How do we develop that discipline within ourselves? How do we know we're marching towards success? How do we measure excellence? How do we recognize and reward excellence? How will we know we are making progress? Now, when I was thinking about this and listening to all the conversation across campus, what I worked on was the idea that excellence is held at the departmental unit. Departments hire faculty. They mentor them from assistant to associate, associate to full. They attract the students. They educate the students. They set the expectations in the classroom. It is the department and the department culture that sets excellence and the metrics for excellence that we as a campus have, the expectations to which we hold ourselves. It's our colleagues in the department that set that. It rolls up to me at my level in the PRB and that sort of things. But that really is a culmination, a summation of the excellence that exists in the department, in the college, and then at the campus level. All right, so I'm interested in learning what your measures of excellence are. What is it that you value? So we started this process. I said, what are we measuring? How do I know we have excellence? And we go to data analytics, and we ask, what are we measuring? And we're measuring citations, we're measuring publications, we're measuring awards, we're measuring grant money. That's how we tend to compare ourselves. And then we had data on teaching loads and who was teaching what and credit hours, that sort of thing. So we put all that together and we pushed it out to the deans and said, well, what do you think? Are we measuring the right things? Don't worry too much about the numbers. Well, we didn't say that. We said, here's what we're measuring. What do you think? And we want to know what you value. And we got back 2 things. One was the data stinks. You got lousy data. You got really bad data. Okay, that's fine. Well, it's what I can measure. It's what's available in the databases. All right. So now we had to figure out why the databases stink, and we're working on that. So the issue isn't the numbers that are in there. It's what is trying to be captured in those numbers is that things that we value. And the second element is related to that. The first whack in the head I got back was from the Dean of Medicine. And he said, look, you gave me 4 reports. I have 23 departments. Why only 4? What about the rest of the departments? Turns out all the rest of those departments were clinical departments. We aren't capturing any information on what those clinical departments are doing. Do we not value the clinical education and care that the clinical departments are doing? Well, of course we do. Right? We're just not capturing it. So I don't have a mechanism of talking about it, of talking to the dean of medicine about how are you doing in your clinical care. Right? This also came up in a conversation with chairs in the college, that we were discussing how we could get to unit standards and impact, and the question was, well, what do publications, what do citations have to do with drama? Okay, well, I don't know. What is it that you value? What is it that makes you a rocking drama department? Okay, well, you need to tell me. So what we are doing is pushing this out to you now, back to Bruce, out to the units. This is the process that you've been working on, is you should develop what is it that really drives excellence in your division, in your discipline. Okay? That it doesn't, we're a comprehensive research university. Those standards of excellence have to recognize that comprehensiveness. There's no driving towards a mean here, regression towards a mean. What we're really looking for is to capture the richness of what we are as a campus. For some units, citation, money, awards are going to be, that's the right measure. That's how you swagger. That's how you know you're really good. Right? But for other units, totally inappropriate. Totally inappropriate. That doesn't mean I don't value those other units. I just need to know what is appropriate. Tell me what it is, so I can stand up, and when I'm hobnobbing with other provosts, I can go, listen, I'm really good, and here's why. Okay, so that's what I want to hear. And you know those things. You need to now capture them, reflect them, and build up your process so you know what's going on. All right, so we're now sending out this unit standards and impact analysis. We're trying to say what we're measuring should be aligned, and what is good, hopefully, is aligned toward university goals. We all know that the units contribute in different ways and have different standards and metrics. We need to hear those from you, and progress is going to be made when we understand what we're trying to do, how we're going to get there, and we measure progress towards it. Tell us why you're good. It isn't just your scholarship. At a research university, that's what we jump to immediately. We go, oh, it's all about my publications, or it's all about my scholarship, it's all about my creative activity. Turns out we're an educational institution. We have to worry about the quality of our students. What are the educational outcomes in each course? What are the educational outcomes for a degree? What do we want of our graduate students when they graduate? What makes this a rocking graduate program? Okay, that's what we need to know. So it's comprehensive. Your goals and aspirations should reflect the goals and aspirations of the institution in some way. I think one of the key impacts of this is going to be that departments will hold this conversation about what it is they value. What is it that makes a really strong department? How can I get there? You know, I know what I'm going to hear. I'm going to hear, listen, I'm going to get there if you give me more money. All right, that's going to be the answer. Oh, we're small. I need more money. Well, it turns out there's a finite amount of money. That's the reason why I put this up. All of the money, the vast majority of the money, is right here. One of the realities that we have to face is that New York State doesn't have a lot of money that they're willing to give higher education. Our state money isn't going to grow rapidly. Our tuition isn't going to grow rapidly. All right? So we're talking about this sort of money. All right? So when we think about our goals, our aspirations, and how we're going to achieve excellence, we have to be very realistic about the box within which we're working and begin to think of ways that we can drive excellence within that box. Right? So that's what's got to be reflected, I hope, is units begin to talk about their aspirations and targets for all activities: education, clinical care, research, creative activities, engagement, and economic development. We need to think about those things as an institution. Higher ed has changed fantastically over my career and the resources that are available to us. And I can't help it. That's what's happening in the outside world. That is our operational budget. We don't have any more money than that. So how do we think about working within that budget in order to drive the excellence that is UB? All right, so here's the timeline for it. We pushed out the bad data to the deans in March. We heard back from them. We asked if we were close, and we heard back, well, in some cases you are, in a lot of cases you're not. So we said, great, we're now pushing out again, and I'm asking, starting right now, I'm asking units, the schools and the colleges to now push this down to departments and to individuals and get the conversations going at the departmental level. What are your goals? What are your standards across all of the activities that we value at UB? All right, we hope sometime in September to begin to finalize unit goals and measures of effectiveness, how we're going to get where we're going. And then these become part of the ongoing planning and budget process. And there's July 2015 there because that our calendar that we've just committed to is to load budgets for the next year every July. So deans and department chairs know what their budgets are going to be on that time. So how will we use the information? That's always a question. And we're not imagining that this information will be used in a formulaic way. You set your target at 5 papers and you get 6, so you get more money. No, it's not going to work that way. I'm imagining right now that what this process will be used for is to enrich the conversation that I have with the dean. So when I'm talking with Bruce about what's going on in the college, we can talk in a much richer way about what is valued by the faculty, what is it that makes our discipline strong, and then how is it that we as an institution and the college are able to invest in order to grow that excellence. That's how we hope to use it, is starting with conversations. I'm imagining we don't really know what we want to measure right now. We're going to stumble. We're going to improve it over time. I don't know of any institution that has done this very well yet. A lot of institutions are trying. And so I'm sort of challenging us to think about what are our metrics of success in education, in research, and in service, and to think about how they play out in particular disciplines, and then let's talk about how we're measuring up and how we can get better. So, the Realizing UB 2020 process, I feel that the last 18 months have created a pathway for where we want to go, and it's sort of illuminated that with the expectations of what the outside world is doing and how it's changing, and therefore how we have to change internally in response to that. I think we've established traits we want our graduates to have. We've developed signature initiatives that capture our aspirations and desire for the university to be excellent. We've created a system that is developed to align resource and allocation towards university goals, resource allocation towards university goals. And I'm terribly excited to be here. I think UB is moving forward in a strategic and coordinated way, and I think there's an upside. We're going places, all right? So with that, I'll stop and be happy to hold a conversation.